perspectives. We have with us Amanda Jenkins, who's a research coordinator of OA-Involve, a project that's exploring best practices for the involvement of older adults in research and technology projects. We also have Romeo Kolobong, who's an AGE-WELL HQP, and he's a research associate here at Toronto Rehab Institute. And then we also have Ian Goldman, who's for 30 years, he led projects to deploy software and improve processes in social services and pharmaceutical settings. Ian is actually part of the Older Adult Partner Research Group of OA-Involve, so we're extremely excited to hear from his perspective as well. So just a few housekeeping items. The talk today will be about 45 minutes roughly, and we'll have time at the end for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to use the raise your hand function in Zoom. You can type your answer in the chat or question in the chat box, or you can type it in the Q&A as well, and we'll address those at the end. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to you, Amanda, to kick things off.
Great, thanks, Sam. So just to reiterate, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Amanda Jenkins, and I'm the research coordinator for OA-Involve. So my role involves managing the OA-Involve project, which includes researchers, HQPs, and an older adult research partner group, which I will speak to a little bit about more in a minute. And I'm presenting today with Romeo Kolobong and Ian Goldman. And as you may have read from the description of today's webinar, the webinar is geared towards HQP who have an interest in photo voice. So whether photo voice is completely new to you or you are familiar with it already, we hope that you learn something new today that you can apply to your current project as well as future projects when working with older adults. So to provide you with some context, Romeo, Ian, and myself are members of the OA-Involve team. And OA-Involve stands for Older Adults Active Involvement in Aging and Technology Research and Development. Our project is led by Dr. Susan Kirkland from Dalhousie University. And the team also consists of two co-investigators, Dr. Pia Contos from Toronto Rehab Institute and Dr. Kieran O'Doherty from the University of Guelph. The team also has several HQPs, the OARPG, which is the Older Adult Research Partner Group. And the OARPG is a group of older adult volunteers who provide advice and guidance on the development, implementation, and progress of the OA-Involve project. So together, we establish models of best practice for the active involvement of older adults in aging and technology projects to support the development of technology that improves the independence, health, well-being, and quality of life of older adults. The OARPG have been actively engaged throughout the OA-Involve project. So OARPG members have given presentations, they've written blogs, they have participated in our case studies project by interviewing participants and analyzing transcripts. And they've also collaborated with researchers to produce reports, briefs, an animation video, 2 Twitter takeovers, a Twitter workshop, and of course, a photo voice project, which we will be speaking about today. So for today's webinar, we're going to be talking about the following. What is photo voice? So this includes the theory of photo voice and its usefulness as an engagement and knowledge mobilization tool, how to implement a photo voice style project using an example from the OA-Involve project, the thoughts and experiences of older adults who participated in the project, and tips on how to implement a photo voice style project as a means of older adult engagement and knowledge mobilization. As Sam mentioned, if you do have questions, we ask that you post them in the chat group, which is going to be monitored, or to please ask them at the end of the webinar, as we do have time reserved at the end for a Q&A. So what is photo voice? Photo voice is a qualitative research method that allows individuals, often these are people who are marginalized in a community, to present their perspectives and raise awareness of overlooked or hidden issues within one's community or about one's experiences. So rather than giving cameras to what we consider to be experts, so we can think of people like researchers, policymakers, or professional photographers, these cameras are given to individuals who are directly impacted by a particular issue in their community, but don't necessarily have the resources to change policies that would help address these issues. So Photo Voice really allows marginalized groups to tell a story through the use of photos. Now, compared to other research methods, Photo Voice can be a more creative process because it does involve the use of photographs. It is also a method that can empower people because it helps those who are disadvantaged or who have limited power in society to share their lived experiences through photos. Often these photos will be accompanied with explanations or captions to help convey what the photos mean to the people that took them. Or another way of thinking about this is that it helps to explain their world to others. So for this reason, Photo Voice is considered an awareness-raising research method because it can be used to bring about social change when other more traditional research methods may be less successful in doing so. Now, Photo Voice has a really interesting background. So it was first developed by researchers Caroline Wang and Mary Ann Burris in 1992, and they are credited with doing the first Photo Voice project. So for this project, they wanted to bring the daily life experiences of women living in a village in China into decision-making for regional development. And they did this by training the women in the village to use cameras, and they asked them to photograph their everyday lives. The photographs that the women took included things like heavy housework and field work that the village women were expected to perform, as well as the difficulty that the women had in getting drinking water to their community. So since the study, many researchers have used Photo Voice when working with marginalized groups because it is a powerful method of understanding others' experiences. So there are generally three main goals of Photo Voice. This includes enabling people to record and reflect on their community's strengths and concerns, promoting critical dialogue and knowledge about personal and community issues through large and small group discussion about their photographs, and reaching policymakers. And this third point is really about making an impact and creating social change to better the lives of marginalized groups. So in terms of breaking down the steps to Photo Voice, what's presented here on the screen is somewhat of a simplified overview, but does provide an idea of what is involved. So the first step would be training your participants. This includes discussing the purpose of your study, how to use the cameras, and how the photographs will be used during the study and afterwards. Your participants would then take photos that represent their experiences about a specific issue within their communities. The third step would involve participatory analysis. So photos would be analyzed with participants. So for example, you could have participants show their photos and explain why they took them and even discuss if certain photos evoked certain feelings. You could also look at the themes across the photographs, and from these themes, you would discuss what needs you are prioritizing and what action is going to be taken. So that leads into the final step around knowledge mobilization. So after you've completed your analysis, you'd want to disseminate that information somehow from your project. So this could include, for example, an exhibition of the photos where you invite the public, media, officials, and policymakers to attend. You could also write, for example, a report that is specifically geared towards policymakers. Other options include things like posting the photos online to further build awareness around the issue that is being conveyed in the photos. So there are many different options around knowledge mobilization and kind of this action stage. There are many reasons why researchers would want to conduct a photo voice project, and I'm going to cover a few for today's webinar. So this first point here is that it allows people who are underrepresented in communities to express issues that are relevant and important to them. So this point is important because it's about empowering marginalized groups. And this empowerment comes from giving cameras to people in communities who may not otherwise have access to them to create change in their communities. So it's a way to help marginalized groups really be heard. It is also a powerful way of helping others understand issues in their community. So in part, this is because it enables people to think critically about their community, including issues they may not be aware of or perhaps have never thought about before. And it really provides an opportunity to discuss how everyday societal and political forces impact the lives of others. And then these last 2 points here may be the most important because no previous experience is required in using cameras, which means that photo voice is accessible to many individuals. So for example, this could include individuals who may not be able to read or write in a dominant language, or those who may have been stigmatized, who have stigmatized health conditions, to still communicate their experiences and issues that are important to them. So it's really another medium to share people's experiences. So when should we use photo voice? We want to use photo voice when we want to make problems visible. So these are not problems or issues that researchers think are important. Rather, these are problems that are being identified from people within the community who directly experience them. And this is because what researchers think is important may actually neglect what the community thinks is important. So you can see how there could be some discrepancies there. We may also want to use photo voice when we want to do a community assessment, when we want to impact policies. So photo voice would be important if you as a researcher want to help the community or want to help the people in the community address the issues that they are identifying. We may also want to use it when we want a group situation to somehow be publicized. So photo voice typically involves the perspectives of individuals who lack a voice in the community. So this could include people who are homeless, people with physical and/or mental disabilities, older people, people with chronic diseases, individuals from lower socioeconomic status, minorities, marginalized groups, and children and youth. So it's important to talk about some of the ethical considerations of a photo voice study because taking pictures may be considered intrusive or damaging to the participants in the community at large. And in addressing some of these ethical issues, which I will briefly cover, it's important that when researchers are training participants how to use cameras, that they talk about these ethical considerations related to taking photographs. So this includes the ethics around privacy, including respecting the privacy of those in the community, whether it's considered an individual's private space, like inside of someone's home, or an individual's privacy while out in a public space. This means that it's important to ask for informed consent before taking photos, including those of family members, which we often don't think about as being part of the public. Now, in comparison, it isn't necessary to get permission if you're taking a picture of a group of people where their faces will not be recognizable. In terms of personal safety, researchers should discuss safety issues around taking photographs with participants. So this includes where participants are traveling or going in the community to get a photo and whether those are safe areas. There are many other ethical considerations when considering a photo voice project, but they are beyond the scope of this webinar. So if you are interested in learning more, I do encourage you to seek out additional resources. If you're thinking about using photo voice for a research project, it is helpful to think about what are some of the advantages and limitations of using this method. And I think that one of the biggest advantages is that photo voice provides an opportunity for researchers and people in the community to collaborate and work together towards community change. And this really touches upon the point here on the screen of conducting power sharing research. Researchers can also gain valuable insight to important issues in communities, especially from the perspectives of those who live within those communities. The broader community can also benefit from photo voice projects because they can provide the opportunity for community growth and improvements, such as better services, programs, and policies that support the health and well-being of members within those communities. However, there are also limitations that we need to consider when using photo voice. So this includes the time commitment that is required for both researchers and the participants in the project. So for example, it may be difficult for some participants to commit to a project that perhaps is going to last several weeks. As well, sometimes the outcome or impact of a photo voice project may not be as significant as what is expected by the participants or the broader community. So the researchers, as researchers, we really need to be aware of how to manage expectations if the impact is less significant than what we're hoping for. It can also be challenging for some participants to present abstract or complex ideas through photographs. So this is something that we need to keep in mind as well. In terms of practical limitations, there can be damage to or loss of cameras during the project. So it may be costly if the researcher does need to replace the cameras. So there are several limitations that researchers do need to think about before committing to a photo voice project. And it's really important to think through these limitations and how best to address them. So I'm now going to turn the webinar over to Romeo, who's going to take you through the process of implementing a photo voice-style project.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, everyone. My name is Romeo Kalabong, and as mentioned, I'm an AGE-WELL HQP for the OA Involved project. Here I am right there. I'm also the lead of engagement for the Older Adult Research Partner Group, or OARPG for short, which means that I try to ensure that all OARPG members feel as engaged as they would like in the OA Involved project. And I work out of the Kite Research Institute at Toronto Rehabilitation Institute, University Health Network. So I will now take you through the photo voice-style project that members of the OARPG participated in at AGE-WELL's 3rd annual conference in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I'll talk about how to implement such a project. As Amanda mentioned, a photo voice is typically used as a participatory action research tool, for example, highlighting problems or issues and making them more visible. OA Involved and the OARPG took on a photo voice project more as a means of older adult engagement. So since this was the first time that the OARPG members would be participating in the AGE-WELL conference, we wanted to make sure that they felt as engaged in the conference as possible, as opposed to passively being involved as an attendee. The former co-lead of OA Involved, Judith Smith, originally proposed the idea of doing a photo voice-style project with the OARPG. She thought that such a project would be an engaging and meaningful way for the OARPG members to participate in the conference. and facilitate reflection on how they are engaging with the conference activities. OA Involved's former research coordinator, Isabella, led the implementation of the photovoice project, while the other HQPs, including myself, helped to facilitate. So photovoice was just one of multiple ways that the OARPG members were meaningfully engaged at the AGE-WELL conference. OARPG members were provided with the program for the conference ahead of time, and so with the help of the OA Involved researchers, they were able to decide in advance which sessions they would like to attend. The OARPG members gave a presentation at a Lunch and Learn session co-developed by the Work Package 1 project. At this session, each of the OARPG members who presented spoke about their experiences and their thoughts on their involvement in research. They were also involved in a number of planning meetings for the conference. This included meetings to develop their Lunch and Learn presentation, coordinating travel and meetup times, making decisions on group social outings and restaurants for team meals, etc. The OARPG members attending the conference were informed of photovoice at one of the earlier OA Involved conference planning meetings. The photovoice-style project was suggested as an idea for our group to participate in while at the conference, and the OARPG members were provided some basic information about photovoice, as well as some resources to provide more of a background on what photovoice is. All three of the OARPG members planning on attending the AGE-WELL conference agreed to participate in the photovoice project, and they were Bessie Harris from Halifax, Janet Fowler from Guelph, and Ian Goldman from Toronto, who you will hear from later on in this webinar. They were involved in multiple meetings leading up to the conference for the purposes of planning their involvement in the photovoice project. One of the first steps of planning a photovoice project would be to determine the purpose of the project. One of the ways that our project differed in how photovoice is often done, i.e. compared to community-based participatory research, is that the purpose of the photovoice project was suggested by the researchers, which was to document the conference. However, the OARPG members were involved in refining the purpose to include the involvement or experiences of older adults. As a group, we also wanted to share those experiences with the OARPG members who were not able to attend the AGE-WELL conference. We provided an info sheet to the OARPG members in advance of arriving at the conference. This information was more detailed compared to the initial introduction to photovoice at the outset of the project. This info sheet included background info on what is photovoice, key concepts about photovoice, tips for a successful photovoice project, and suggested further reading. And the info sheet also included an infographic to remind the OARPG members of the photovoice process. After learning about photovoice and selecting a topic as the focus of the photovoice project, take as many pictures related to your topic as you like, aiming for at least 10 to 20 photos. Discuss the photos. So this involves reflecting upon your experiences. Write a narrative, i.e. the accompanying text to the photos that explains why you took the photo and the message that each photograph conveys. Decide which photos you would like to share with others. We discuss the photos as a team while choosing the photos. Often projects will ask participants to choose a smaller number, for example 5 to 10, but choosing more would be fine. There's the option to invite others to share in the discussion. And there's also the option to compile the photos and narrative for sharing, presentation, and discussion. Lastly, debrief the process and outcomes. For example, what would you do differently next time? The equipment for taking the photos was also something that needed to be sorted out. For our project, we were able to source smartphones and iPads for the OARPG members to use at the conference from one of the institutions of a research team member. During the conference, we made sure to check in with the participants. So it was really important that the OARPG felt comfortable with the project. And since the OA Involved team, including the OARPG, is spread out throughout Canada, the AGE-WELL conference was the first time that many of us were meeting in person. So not only was being at the AGE-WELL conference a new experience for them, but finally meeting with our team face-to-face was also very new. This was all part of the learning curve for the OARPG members of the conference. However, doing the Photo Voice project together created a great sense of camaraderie and expedited the process of the OA Involved team getting to know each other better. We needed to provide the devices to participants at the conference. Since the devices were not their own, some OARPG members needed help with how to turn the device on and off, how to take photos with the device, how they can view the photos that they've taken, etc. They may encounter other issues that need to be dealt with right away. So it's also important that checking in and following up continues throughout the photo taking process. As part of the info sheet I mentioned earlier, we provided the participants with some tips on taking photos. So you'll usually want to stand about 3 to 5 feet from your subject so as not to be too close or too far. Hold your elbows close to your sides and try not to shake while taking photos to reduce the chance of capturing blurry images. Try taking photos using different angles and lighting to reflect different viewpoints. Be mindful of the lighting in the area that you're in. For example, if you're outside, it's a good idea to keep the sun at your back or to the side. Similarly, if you are inside, you want to make sure that the light source is not directly behind the subject, as backlit photos can be tricky to take well. Remember to center your subject in your camera lens, so you want to ensure that the subject fills the frame but is not cut off by it. And also, it's a good idea to check your photos after taking them to make sure that they are clear. The process of creating the final photo voice document or product does take some time. So multiple video conference meetings were set up since the 3 OARPG members live in Halifax, Guelph, and Toronto. The OARPG members met with Isabella, our former research coordinator, and she assisted them in choosing the photos to include in the Photo Voice project. Because the intention of the project was to include the photos and text of all 3 OARPG members who attended the conference, we tried to avoid too much overlap with the photos included in the final document. Once the photos were chosen, the OARPG members wrote the accompanying text with some guidance from the research coordinator, for example, providing just some minor suggested edits. And once the photos and the accompanying text were finalized, the research coordinator again collaborated with the OARPG members who were interested in working on the formatting, and then again with everyone to finalize the document. So now, I'll briefly take you through the Photo Voice project created by the OARPG. On the next few slides, I will provide some examples of how each of the OARPG members used Photo Voice to convey their experiences at the AGE-WELL conference. So here's one of the photos included in Bessie's portion of the Photo Voice project. This photo was taken of me and Bessie as we were participating in one of the activities during the Lunch and Learn organized by Work Package 1, entitled From Principle to Action, Older Adults as Experts. Bessie describes this as one of the more humorous moments, which I appear to think was funny. We were to test actual gadgets on the market today from the viewpoint of older adults. We first started with a fire alarm that we inadvertently set off, and then moved on to this blood pressure machine where I moved in for a closer look. In her part of the Photo Voice project, she describes this as a moment of fun in a serious learning experience to test the ease of assembly, readability, clarity of instructions, ease of use, and true usefulness for older adults of the many gadgets on the market. So this is a great example of a you had to be there moment. So having the photo along with Bessie's text to convey the humor and joy experienced by us helps others to also get a sense of what it was like to be there in that moment. And here is an excerpt from Janet's portion of the photovoice project. Pictured here is a socially assistive robot that Janet encountered during the drinks and demo session at the conference. She wrote, "I wonder if the time will come when my well-being depends on the guidance of a robot." So this is another great example of her expressing how she engaged with the presentations at the conference, reflecting on how the research and technology being developed at the AGE-WELL conference may impact her future well-being. Janet also reflects on her own contributions to OA Involve while seeing how those contributions are showcased at the conference. I'm pictured here with Isabella, OA Involve's former research coordinator, at our drinks and demos table where we are showcasing our animation video called "We're in it together, creating technology with older adults." Based on our scoping review, the 2-minute video offers researchers insights into the ways of engaging older adults and highlights the value that older adults can bring to the research and design process. And in keeping with the messaging of the video, the OARPG was involved in its development. Here, Janet shows her excitement in seeing the animated video she collaborated on. She wrote, "I recall our national video conference meeting when we first discussed possible scenarios and scripts, and then later had the opportunity to view the proposed video and to suggest script changes, which we did, and here is the result." Here, in an excerpt from Ian's portion of the photovoice project, is a great example of some reflection and assessment about the experience he had at the AGE-WELL conference. The photo of the thank you sign is used as a mechanism to reflect on what he was thankful for. Ian wrote, "Thank you for the opportunity to better understand the AGE-WELL network and organization, begin work with Pan-Canada representatives on the community stakeholder agreement, see and connect with projects and their people firsthand." Now, photovoice can also provide a way for the participants to critique and reflect on how their experience could have been improved. So for example, here we see how Bessie reflects on a barrier to her engagement at the conference. "I'm not in the least technically adept. AGE-WELL had a conference app, which Tanya, a former OA Involved HQP, helped me download. No paper program. I found it a bit awkward to use. The ability to use and understand technology and be comfortable doing so is, I think, assumed by AGE-WELL, but for me, it has been another major learning experience, both with AGE-WELL and OA Involved. It is through photovoice that Bessie was able to reflect on and subsequently highlight some of the constraints to full involvement that she, and likely other older adults, experienced at the conference by not having a paper copy of the program." So after the conference was complete, a preliminary version of the photovoice project was presented to OA Involve at our bi-monthly national OARPG meeting. Once we had more time to work with each of the OARPG members to finalize the photovoice project, the document was posted onto our website, which was shared with the entire OA Involved team, including the rest of the OARPG. A video slideshow version was also created that was uploaded to our YouTube page and made accessible from our website. So photovoice can be a very useful tool to showcase the experiences of older adults. As seen with examples from the OA Involved photovoice project with the OARPG, it provides insight into the unique perspectives and experiences of the participants. It also allows for groups like older adults to share and express their learnings in a way that is more accessible to others. And here are the links for you to access the full photovoice project here, both the PDF document and the video slideshow. And now I'll turn it over to Ian, who will offer perspectives from the OARPG members who participated in our photovoice project.
So I'm actually going to present these perspectives of the 3 participants in the photovoice project, and they are the results of a reflection exercise which the OA Involved team has done. And the first question, as you see, was, overall, how would we, the older adults, describe our photo voice experience? All three of us felt that it was good to be involved from the beginning stages of the photo voice project and to get an instruction session about the project. That gave us context, it gave us a sense of where we were going on something that was going to be very new for the three of us. So very new is something that older adults are interested in doing. They're also a little bit cautious about it, and they're especially happy, speaking for Bessie, Janet and myself, when we think it's going to have a valuable meaning and result. We did indeed find participation to be a fun experience and very much a learning experience. It was very stimulating for us to try a new technique. And that's a reason that older adults participate in research projects. They welcome the opportunity of keeping their grey cells active. Our final, most important conclusion was that our engagement at the conference was significantly enhanced by conducting the Photo Voice project as part of being there. What did we older adults enjoy about our involvement? Well, here you see a picture of myself working with Professor Jem Boger from University of Waterloo, and I had the chance to work with researchers and learn more about photo voice. This was a great way of being actively involved in the conference, and recognizing that the three of us had not been to research type conferences before in our lived experience, and we were a little bit fishy out of water in that context. Walking around and asking questions and taking photographs helped us to really get involved. It also facilitated conversations with presenters. So for example, at the poster sessions or at the drinks and demos, we felt more comfortable going up and approaching or allowing our curiosity to be fully expressed, knowing that we had the photo voice mandate as well. We also recognized that this would be a chance for us to capture the experience of going to an AGE-WELL conference that the other 9 members of the older adult research team who were not able to attend because they're across 4 centers in Canada and not all were able to travel. That gave us a sense of fulfillment. And by no means least was the experience and increasing our knowledge of using iPads and iPhones to actually take photographs. In some of our cases, it was the first time that we'd ever had the chance to do this. You'll hear more about that shortly. And here it comes. What was not enjoyable about the involvement? So we were finding that the first use of an iPhone or an iPad could be quite challenging. The touchscreen approach, or trying to keep notes of the photos that we'd taken as we were moving around, we found quite tricky. So you'll see that we've got some lessons learned in a subsequent slide, and this is definitely one of them. For some of us, our schedules leading up to the conference were really quite busy. And so it left us a little less than fully prepared upon arrival at the conference and all the activity that had to actually be ready to jump in and start getting fully engaged in the project. And similarly, the conference schedule, which is quite intensive, especially for older adults who traveled some distance, didn't give a great deal of time for the very important reflection and writing on notes of the photos that had been taken, or any other photos that we wanted to borrow from others to tell our story. So we'd recommend that scheduling for that be incorporated. So what can be done differently for future projects? More time to become familiar with the photography equipment. We'd actually suggest having perhaps some dry runs or some mini rehearsals before actually getting into the field of battle, the field of fun. Even a little more time to have a better understanding of the photo voice. I personally would have appreciated perhaps a small video of how a photo project would run, including not just taking of the photographs, but the subsequent work in analyzing and reflecting on the photographs. And it's never too early in the project to get your subjects, your older adult participants, involved in it, because the more early direction they have, the greater that they can contribute. So finally, some other feedback and comments that the three of us had. We all felt that it was a worthwhile experience participating in the project, especially when we saw the final product, which we're giving you a link to and Romeo has shown you excerpts of. Participating definitely brought into focus for the three of us the whole experience of attending the conference, and it provided guidance for subsequent conferences. This one was 2017, so that new participants coming in could use the photo voice tool as illustration and context. And it definitely enabled greater knowledge of AGE-WELL itself and greater connection to the network. Our final conclusion is that we feel that photo voice can be extremely meaningful, especially when the topic chosen is one that all participants resonate with, and in this case, we did.
Thank you, Ian. So now we'll end off the webinar with some final tips for a successful photo voice project. So first, you'll want to reassure the participants that photographic experience is not required. A project like this may seem daunting to older adult participants, so once again, allowing enough time to become familiar with the camera or whatever device will be used is very much recommended. Of course, you'll want to make sure everyone is clear on what photo voice is, as well as its purpose. It will not be engaging for the participants if they are not clear on why they are participating in such a project. As with most aspects of older adult engagement, as well as the research and development process in general, it's important to involve participants in the process as early as possible. This not only allows participants more time to understand photo voice, but it also facilitates more meaningful engagement in the process if participants are involved early in the planning of the project. It can be helpful to remind participants to think about what messages they want to convey when choosing photographs and creating the accompanying text. As Amanda mentioned previously, please ensure that everyone is safe while taking photos. You don't want people falling down or bumping into something while they're trying to take a photo. So it's a good reminder for participants that they need to be aware of their surroundings. Amanda also mentioned the issues of consent. So it's best to avoid taking photos of individuals of small groups who might expect privacy, even in public spaces. So taking photos of people in a location where they are not individualized or recognizable and might expect that photos are being taken, for example, a room full of people listening to a presentation at a conference, should not be an issue. If possible, you want to note the caption. So to help with creating the text for selected photos, it can be very helpful to make notes or brief captions as photos are being taken. As Ian mentioned, finding the time to do this can be challenging depending on the situation or the context of the photo voice project, but making notes about photos as you go is recommended. And lastly, it's just important to have fun. Obviously, this depends on the topic and the purpose of the project, But when using photo voice as a means of older adult engagement, it's a great opportunity for the participants to have an enjoyable experience. So here we have some additional resources that may be of interest to you. The first is a photo voice guide that was created shortly after the AGE-WELL conference in Winnipeg and contains some of the same information given to you today. The second is the photo voice info sheet that I referenced earlier in the webinar. This info sheet was given to OARPG members prior to attending the AGE-WELL conference in order to help them document their experiences while at the conference. So I want to thank you all for attending the webinar. So I want to plug our contact information. Please go to our website at oa-involve-agewell.ca for additional resources and content for engaging older adults in technology research and development. You can also connect with us via email, and please follow us on Twitter, where you can get the latest OA Involved news and updates. So now I'll pass it over to Sam to facilitate the Q&A.
Wonderful. First, thank you, all three of you, very much for a wonderful and very informative webinar on the use of photo voice with a really great example, too. So for those listening, please feel free to, once again, ask your questions either in the chat box or virtually raise your hand, and I can unmute you as well. While you guys are thinking of questions, we do have some comments that are in the box. So just wanted to say that none of the attendees have reported that they've used photo voice in the past, but a few are interested in doing so in the future, because it sounds like a great activity to be completed prior to a focus group, for example, to help facilitate meaningful conversation among individuals that might have difficulty clearly communicating their thoughts. And I was wondering, just to follow up on that comment, whether or not you've seen photo voice used, before focus groups in that manner before. Is it something that you would recommend?
I hadn't heard of it being used in that context, but I think that really makes sense, and that's actually a really great approach. I mean, obviously, depending on what the focus of the focus group is, photo voice just really opens up so many of the issues that wouldn't necessarily be explained in a focus group. So you're actually getting to know more about the participants in their day-to-day lives or whatever that the context of the photo voice project would be, and they're able to share and express certain aspects that they may have trouble in identifying in a focus group setting. So I think that that sounds like a really great way to facilitate the focus group.
I would add to that we all know that a picture paints 1,000 words, and where the participants may have challenges in being able to identify or express a concept, asking them to send in a photograph, not necessarily take one, which speaks to them about the theme to be addressed in the focus group, would, as Romeo said, elicit some very important points in advance of the focus group.
Great, thank you. We have a question about the, I think it's your experience, Ian, of using photo voice in this past, this past conference, the 2017 conference. And the question is, what are some unexpected challenges that you faced during the conference using photo voice? And for you, Romeo and Amanda, what were some unexpected challenges that you guys faced when it came to preparing the older adults for using photo voice, as well as actually creating a knowledge mobilization product out of it?
During the conference itself, the biggest challenge was finding the time to reflect, to look at the photos that I'd taken, to make notes on them, and to think about other photographs I would like to take in subsequent days. I missed opportunities. For example, at the Drinks and Demo, I was so engaged in looking at the demonstrations, and it was in the evening after a day of travel, that I got back to my room and thought, wow, I saw so many interesting things. Oh, I didn't get enough photographs. So that by far was the largest challenge.
And in terms of facilitating the project, I definitely think that technical side was a big challenge, and getting all the participants, familiar and comfortable in using the device, because that's really the opening to all of this. If they're not able to capture the photos, then they wouldn't be able to participate in the project. And but out of that, I think we got a lot of learnings. Coincidentally, with the photovoice project, we're trying to get to know what the experiences were, but just in having to deal with some of those challenges, we see what older adults have to deal with. In learning a new technology, it wasn't, here, take this camera, take this iPad, go ahead, take pictures, and then we'll see you later. Like, you can't facilitate a project like that. I mean, it's dealing not only with taking photos, but how are they going to get the photos off of that device afterwards? So there's that continual follow-up that those who grow up in a technological age, we really take for granted. And so thinking about how to break this down, but not in a condescending way, being able to be there, helpful and supportive, and creating an environment that is open, where the older adults can come to you with any issues that they may have. And I think that was really one of the best ways for us to not only get to know the participants, but just to really follow in the footsteps of what we are trying to do, which is to meaningfully engage older adults. And that comes through really helping them throughout every step of the way and trying to overcome those challenges together.
Great, thank you. So we have another question about the reflection process that you mentioned there, Ian. And the question is meant for everyone on the team, actually. And it's whether or not there were guidelines provided in order to help guide the reflection process as older adults looked at the photos that they took, and also whether or not there are some risks and potential ethical issues about in terms of, I guess, in terms of potentially leading the reflection into a certain path as well, that you guys had to think about and consider as you worked and prepared.
I'll start by talking about the reflective process. As we saw in one of the slides, at the end of the project, the reflection exercise was indeed led by a main older adult researcher, and the questions were very well crafted from my perspective. They were open, they did not lead, they were open to both the positive and negative aspects of the exercise. That was very important. Just to give a framework for participants to be able to hang their coats onto these various hangers is extremely helpful. It elicits the feedback that the project needs. Actually, during the activity at the conference, having facilitators with particularly strong listening skills, facilitation skills, who clearly have no judgmental or bias type thinking, was critical to the successful engagement, especially as we older adults started to bump into problems with technology that we were not familiar with, and we were also in a type of process that we hadn't played with before. So those soft skills are very important, and I'm going to just go on a bit of a limb here and say that quite often researchers are very, very highly intelligent and highly educated and academically trained, and it's the wonderful balance of those skills as well as these soft skills of facilitation I'm talking about that makes for a great researcher in certain types of projects. That's
really well put, Ian. And I just want to add that to be clear, that I wasn't as involved in that reflection process, so that was more with our former research coordinator, who's no longer with our project anymore. But as I understand it, she really did let the OARPG members take the lead, especially in choosing the photos. You know, in preparation for this webinar, obviously Ian was involved in it, and I reached out to the other two participants, and one of them was telling me that you know, she chose quite a few photos to be included in her photo voice, because, you know, she felt that she wanted them in there, and she thought that may have been cut down by the research coordinator, but all of them were kept. So she really tried to take their lead on all of that. As far as I understand, all the text was completely the OARPG members, with the exception of some minor edits or changes or suggestions. But the bulk of it was really coming from the OARPG members.
Right, the notations on each photograph.
Yes.
Yep.
Great, thank you. So we don't have any questions listed at the moment, so if anyone has any additional ones, please do feel free to type it in the chat box. We have just a few minutes left for questions and comments. And while you guys are thinking of those questions, I want to know, how did you set off the fire alarm?
Well, it was, I can't remember, it was not the fire alarm in the building, thankfully. It was, actually, you know what, sorry, I might have misremembered. It's some kind of like a smoke like a fire smoke detecting alarm. But that was actually a really great workshop exercise to have to figure out how to open these gadgets. I mean, sometimes even the packaging is so hard with anyone who still has, you know, complete use of their hands, full dexterity, and it's so difficult. The instructions are so tiny. Trying to look at these little tiny buttons, it's no wonder that anything worked at all. So it really goes to show you, it was a great hands-on working experience, and you saw Bessie and I had a really great time in what was really a great learning moment about the difficulties that older adults can face. Really anyone, and just a lot of these gadgets are not as user-friendly, which really goes back to, you know, the main goal of OA Involve is to involve older adults as early as possible and as meaningfully as possible in the technology research and development process, because that's how you're going to better ensure that you'll create a product that is actually user-friendly and able to help the population that you're setting to help out.
Absolutely, and it sounds like photo voice could even be potentially used for those who didn't do that due process appropriately. It should actually do some user design research at the end.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There's so much we don't know, and photo voice is really a great mechanism and tool to really unpack a lot of the issues that we don't think about or take for granted. So it is a really, really useful tool.
Great. So I'm going to call it a day. It looks like we don't have any additional questions. So thank you once again, Ian, Romeo, and Amanda, for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. I'll encourage each of you to head on over to the OA Involve website here that's listed on the slide. OA Involve is one of the few projects within AGE-WELL that has a really, truly wonderful KM strategy going. So you'll find a lot of videos that are helpful on the site, as well as a large number of templates and other documents that they've created over the past 5 years that could help guide your work as well. So totally recommend you check that out. So thank you once again for joining, and check back in around this time on Monday. We'll have another webinar by HQP John Munoz, who will be talking about XR games and VR. So hopefully we'll see you then. Take care, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.